Welcome, everyone, to the seventh episode of Transrational Perspectives. Coming back to you after a brief hiatus. My name is Noah Taylor, and I'm talking to you today from Bangkok, Thailand. I have a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies, and I currently work with the Unit for Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Innsbruck, Austria.
My name is Sean Bryant. I have a PhD in Peace, Conflict, and Development Studies. I am coming to you from South Korea right now, where I'm working at a university here.
So in our series so far, we've introduced peace and conflict studies and defined what a peace and conflict studies perspective is in our context here. And we've started covering the peace families as they're understood in the transrational peace philosophy. So far, we've covered the energetic pieces, those understandings of peace that are rooted in the key value of harmony, and moral pieces with their connection to justice. And today we're turning our attention to the family of modern pieces.
Now, one of the characteristics of modern pieces is that they are an extension or with a slight shift from the moral pieces. Do you want to run us down with some of the changes that go between the moral paradigm and the modern paradigm?
So the modern pieces are structurally similar in their conception to the moral pieces, but in this case, what was taken by the place of God has been replaced by rationality. And so in this structure reduces the world to this worldly conception and emphasizes the secular understanding that which is the most important are those elements that can be observed through the senses, measured and quantified through the scientific method.
And so this comes to us, say through the European Enlightenment and the scientific revolution of the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, which is the grounding for what we would now refer to as modernity, and so what we are calling modern pieces are based in the epistemology, which meaning like the understanding, the belief system, the idea of how the world works. That is modernity, modernism, based in the ideas of the Hobbesian nation state, the political ideals of the Enlightenment, and the primacy of scientific positivism that comes out of a tradition of Galileo, Newton, and René Descartes.
And with secularized understanding of peace, we get an understanding of peace that is quite mechanic, and it takes a certain temporal view and places peace as an ultimate end goal, similar to the moral pieces, which saw heaven to be a paradise to be achieved after death. Peace is projected forward into a final stage of history, into the future. And one set of implications that we can draw from this is we can see very clearly the rooting of what we now understand as development policy and development theory. We can trace a clear line from the conceptualization of underdevelopment put forth by President Truman in his second inaugural address on January 10th, 1949, against the backdrop of the fears of communism, putting forth this notion of the West helps the rest. And we can see this leading to modernization theory and the acceptance of the price of progress as put forth by the UN Department of Social and Economic Affairs to our so-called one world, one system of a singular organization system based on the nation state, universal human rights, neoliberal capitalism, and modern science. We can then see the swinging of the pendulum and the emergence of dependencia theorists and world systems analysis in the tradition of Wallenstein, to the sustainability reports put forward by the Meadows Report and the 1980s Lost Decade of Development, through policies of structural adjustment and the resulting critique of subsistence theory, and finally to the postmodern and post-structuralist critique, where we find our intersection with peace and conflict studies, as well as the insights of post-colonialism and post-development.
So within this framework that we're talking about, we see modern pieces as being primarily defined by a piece out of security. And this security is arbitrated by the nation state. And so this is the fundamental building blocks of the United Nations. And so we have this idea of some kind of global governance that is based on these autonomous actors of different nation states that have all been, with a few exceptions, a few notable exceptions throughout the years, more or less frozen in time in this Westphalian state of a world order. Do you want to explain a little bit more what that means?
So one of the natural consequences of the thinking of the world in purely mechanical and mechanistic terms is if all things that are important are things that can be quantified and measured, then it's very clear that those things that are valued can be taken away. And this engenders a sense of fear, both at the individual, the communal, and the nation-state levels. And you can see very clearly how this fear of losing what one has or what one nation possesses can lead to our security paradox, where the fear of insecurity drives the concern for security, which then spirals in a self-fulfilling prophecy to more and increasingly more emphasis on security issues.
So, if we look at who makes peace in the understanding of, say, the energetic paradigms or moral paradigms, say, energetic ideas that if I'm at unpeace with you, I try to find some way to make amends and harmonize myself with you, in the idea of an energetic peace as the human being being the intermediary between the cosmos and the earth. Then I'm always trying to find a way to balance the divine energies and of existence. In a modern understanding, if everything is the divine aspect is removed for a scientific and secular worldview, then the people who are able to make peace are no longer anybody who's in relation with other human beings, but experts, right? So this connects to this idea of, say, the peace building fund of the United Nations that contracts these technocrats, sort of experts, which I might mention is also a class of people that we belong to ourselves, that are able then to fix these problems.
And I think that this particular insight is of critical importance in peace and conflict studies, and particularly for applied peace and conflict work and peace research, because peace and conflict studies has emerged as a critique of many of these prevailing notions and understanding of conflict, and also of what to do about conflict. And as we'll come to see as we progress through this video series, we're going to move into a postmodern understanding of peace, and finally a transrational understanding of peace, which will bring together some of the critiques of this modernist paradigm and look for ways of going beyond it and addressing some of its shortcomings, both in terms of its conceptualization of peace work, but also in its implications for applied conflict intervention. So
if we recap and summarize, like, what are the defining characteristics of this framework of modern pieces? We start with the idea of being peace out of security. We have the fundamental actors of being the nation state. We have the idea of the same structure of peace being something that's in the future, and yet because of the cultural forces coming out of Europe, of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, this idea of God, of the divine, of the spiritual has been relegated to the side, and reason, man's power of reason has replaced God. Is there something else you want to add to this list?
I think we've well covered the field of modern pieces, Before we wrap up today, I'd like to put out a few plugs for some new and interesting publications that are coming out. I have a new article coming out entitled Transpersonal Consciousness in Elicitive Teaching in the special issue of Transrational Perspectives in Peace Education, as well as the Manual on Elicitive Curricular Development has just come out, published by the University of Innsbruck Press.
So in the same special issue of the Journal of Peace Education, I have an article that was also published called Diffraction, Transrational Perspectives and Peace Education, New Possibilities, which I contributed to and was written by Kevin Kester and another colleague of ours, Tim Archer.
And you can find the links for all of these articles in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you all for joining us, and see you next time on our next episode of Transrational Perspectives.